In part 4, we'll take a look at the support connective tissues. So in the previous parts, we had taken a look at connective tissue proper. We took a look at the fluid connective tissues. We just want to finish up connective tissue by looking at the support connective tissues. Support connective tissue is going to include both the cartilage and the bone. The three types of cartilage are hyaline, elastic, and fibrous cartilage. Sometimes we call fibrous cartilage fibrocartilage. And then we'll take a look at the bone. There's two types. We're going to do compact and spongy bone. So let's begin with cartilage. The first type of cartilage we want to look at is hyaline cartilage. This is the most abundant cartilage. We find it at the connecting the ribs and the bones, the sternum. Our ribs, we'll learn when we get to the bone module, do not touch the breastbone or the sternum directly. There's a piece of cartilage connecting them. That's all made up of hyaline cartilage. All of our long bones, like the humerus, which is the arm bone, the forearm bones, the lower limb bones, at the ends of the bones, there is hyaline cartilage, which reduces the friction in the joint. It's also found in our voice box, the rings of the trachea. The trachea is the windpipe. Our slides in lab, these are the ones we're going to look at that have hyaline cartilage on them. Bronchi are the tubes that go down into the lungs, carry air down into the lungs. And then even the nasal septum, it's part bone and it's also part cartilage. The nasal septum is the wall that separates our right and left nasal cavities. So this is a pretty stiff yet flexible kind of cartilage. If you just kind of felt in the front of your where your rib cage is, right just next to your breastbone, the sternum, you'll feel it feels like bone, but it's actually cartilage. And as I mentioned earlier, the hyaline cartilage helps to reduce the friction. So here we actually see the arm bone that's known as the humerus, right? This kind of shiny grayish blue is what we're talking about. That is the hyaline cartilage. So the thing with cartilage is you're going to see a nice hyaline cartilage specifically, a nice smooth ground substance, right? This is the kind of a rubbery ground substance. Now there's collagen in here, except you don't see it. It doesn't stain it, so you're not able to see the cartilage, the collagen, but it's in there. The cells that live in the ground substance are called chondrocytes. Right? Chondro means cartilage, cyte means cell. However, they can't live in the ground substance on their own. They can't survive just being embedded in the ground substance. They're going to live in a little chamber or a cavity known as a lacuna. So I'm going to go up over here for a minute. This blue line right here outlines a little cavity, and then in there there's one, two, three, four, five, maybe six cells living in this little chamber or cavity. That little chamber we call lacuna, right? The lacuna is the cavity, and then the chondrocytes live in that cavity. Now we're going to see the same thing in bone. Right? So the lacuna is the cavity, and then the cell living in there is going to be the chondrocyte. It's a very unique appearance. When you see it, you'll know that it's different. We haven't seen anything like that yet. So here's an actual picture from the trachea. Again, you can see nice, beautiful, smooth ground substance. And then again, they kind of the bluish darker blue right here. This is the cavity. So this all this outline here, all of this would be the lacuna, and then living within it are the chondrocytes. On this one, you can actually see some smooth muscle down over here running back and forth, even up over here. But all of this is going to be the hyaline cartilage. All right, another picture, same type of thing. Yeah, doesn't look like anything we've seen before. Again, you can see the cavities, you can see the chondrocyte, all these circles. Another picture just a little bit further away. Now, the second type of cartilage is known as elastic cartilage. Um, This one is found in the great example is the auricle of the ear. So this part of our ear, this whole outside, is the auricle. If you were to take your ear and just kind of flip it down and you let go, it's going to pop right back up. That's because the cartilage that's in there is elastic cartilage. So notice we do see the lacuna with the chondrocytes again, but this time, right, you may see a lot of darkness, a lot of black lines like this. All these black lines, if you remember from areolar connective tissue, is elastic fibers. So you can see here all these fibers right here within the cartilage is the elastic fibers. And again, of course, you have the lacuna and the chondrocyte. Here's just a blow up of that. Same concepts. Another picture, again, all these lacuna, and then again, the black lines would be the elastic fibers. Again, you kind of get the hang of it once you see it a while. All these black lines would give you the clue that you're looking at elastic fibers. The last type of cartilage is known as fibrocartilage. We can call it fibrous cartilage. Either or is okay. As far as the location, the best way to remember this is any disc in the body is going to have fibrocartilage. In this picture here, we see the vertebrae, and then the cushion in between the vertebrae is the intervertebral disc. This is fibrocartilage. In the knee, we have the meniscus. You may have heard of people, tearing their meniscus, medial meniscus, lateral meniscus. That's a disc made of fibrocartilage. When we get to bone, we'll actually see between our pubic bones, there's a disc connecting the left and right pubic bones. That's known as the pubic symphysis. That is also fibrocartilage. So on this one, you would see again the same type of thing. You're going to see the lacuna and the chondrocytes in there, but when you look at the ground substance, it's going to have you'll see the collagen fibers. It has a more of a fibrous look to it. So you will see the collagen fibers a little bit better. Here they actually call it the fibrous matrix. Again, you can kind of see uh, the fibers in there. Where the hyaline cartilage, it was much more smooth. The fibers don't show up. So here's a good example. Again, you're going to see the chondrocytes with the lacuna, same as the previous two cartilages. But if you take a look at the matrix, you can see, right, the cartilage, the collagen fibers have stained in here, so they become evident. There's another picture. Again, same concept. You see the lacuna, chondrocytes, and then but on this one you can really see the collagen. Same type of idea. Again, once you look for those circles, lacuna, chondrocytes, and then you'll see the collagen, that would be fibrocartilage or fibrous cartilage. So that's it for the three types of cartilage. We want to finish up the support connective tissues by looking at bone. The support connective tissues, I'm sorry, with bone, the matrix this time is going to be, or the ground substance is going to be solid, right? So again, you just kind of tap on any one of your bones, you'll see that they're hard, right? Bone is has a lot of different functions. The fact that it's hard, it's a good protector. It provides movement for us. We'll see that muscles are attached to the bones and allows for movement. As we go on through the semester, we'll see that it stores calcium, especially other minerals also. And it's also the site of blood cell formation. We're going to see within bone, we have our bone marrow. So there's two types of bone. We want to just highlight here compact bone and then jump down spongy bone. This is a frontal section of the femur. What I like about this picture is when you look here, you'll see there's a nice, thick, strong bone going around the shaft of the femur here. Look how dense that looks. This is known as compact bone. This is strong, right? This does not break very easy. Now, compared to the bone over here, if you look, all of this bone is much more porous. This is known as spongy bone. So, spongy bone, you'll see between the compact bone, near the ends of the bone up over here, this is known as the epiphyses. We'll get into this later. So a spongy bone is going to be more like up in the ends of the bones. The compact bone is thick in the shaft. And then also in the shaft, there's a canal running down the middle of the shaft. If you notice, the shaft, or the canal, I should say, this is called the medullary canal, is also lined by spongy bone. Okay, so that's going to be our medullary canal. Okay, so this picture is showing us compact bone, spongy bone, and then the spongy bone extends down, lining the medullary canal. So, highlight this word here. The basic structure of compact bone is known as the osteon. It used to be known as the Haversian system. You can use that if you like. I just think osteon is more what we use nowadays and a little bit easier to remember. There are five parts of the osteon we're going to identify both on the microscope and a few models that we have. So let's take a look at what we're talking about there. This is a picture. I actually got this from the internet where we have a picture of the, say, the shaft of the femur that was cut in transverse. So let's see if you agree with this. Out over here, there's a membrane known as the periosteum. We're going to talk about that. That surrounds bone. It's like a dense, irregular connective tissue. Then all of this would be the compact bone. This would be the medullary canal where the bone marrow is. And then lining that medullary canal, we said there is spongy bone. If you look here, all of these circular areas, this one, right, this one here, all of these circular areas, this is the osteon. It kind of reminds me if you took a tree and you cut the tree across to cut the tree down, you would see a bunch of circles, rings that tell you how old the tree is. The osteon kind of looks like that. These osteons run up and down the length of the compact bone. Okay, we'll take a look at that now. You see them over here too. So they're running up and down. Here they show you an osteon. They kind of like pulled up or cut around so we can see the whole osteon. You see how they're running up and down in the compact bone. So let's take a look at the parts. Here's an actual micrograph of the osteon. If you look out here, there's a ring that goes around like this, goes all the way around. Here's another one that goes around. Right here's a third one that goes around. All of these rings, they are known as the concentric lamella. Think of lamella as rings. Concentric just means they go around in a circle. Between the concentric lamella, like right here, all of these are just like cartilage. They're going to be little hollow chambers or cavities. And if you remember in cartilage just now, we called them lacuna. Same thing here. These little cavities are lacuna. But instead of having a cartilage cell living in there, we want to have a bone cell living in there. So the lacuna is going to hold osteocytes this time, not chondrocytes. Chondrocytes are in cartilage. So the osteocytes, they live in the lacuna. So here, this is a diagram showing us, here's the lacuna, the chamber. Here's the osteocyte. Okay, so it's living in there. Now, let's take these two for a minute. Let's say there's an osteocyte living in here and an osteocyte living in here. You're going to see little lines going across. Those lines allow for communication between this osteocyte and that osteocyte. Those little lines are small canals known as canaliculi. Right? So they're little canals, and it allows for communication. So when you look at the osteocyte, you'll see it's like an octopus. It has arms. Here's one of the arms of the osteocyte in the canal, and it's heading towards the other osteocyte's arms, and they communicate with one another. Right, so all of these little, look like almost little cracks, but those are little canals. Those we're going to call canaliculi. Canaliculi, right? Tiny canals. Finally, this last big canal right here is known as the central canal. Within it, there's going to be blood vessels. So those are the parts of the osteon. I'm going to jump ahead for a moment. I want to show you a model that we use. We'll come here and then we'll go back to these other ones. Here's the osteon model. So if you followed me before on the micrograph, this is the same. All of these rings right here going around. This one, right, this ring, all of them. And they dissected them down so you can see them at different levels. All of these rings right here are the concentric lamella. Then between, let's say between this concentric lamella and this one, there's going to be a chamber. So over here, this hollow chamber is the lacuna. Now, it's hollow on this side, but over here they painted in the cells. So here we see the cell in the lacuna, that is the osteocyte. And then connecting the little canals right here. Now they're showing the osteocyte in the canals. These are the canaliculi. Over here, the canaliculi are empty. And this is showing it though on this side of the model empty, and then on this side of the model, the canaliculi and the lacuna have the cells within it. So the final area would be here. This is the central canal right over here. This has all the blood vessels in it. Okay, so that's the osteon model. It goes right along with our diagram that we had over here, our micrograph that we had over here. Here's a couple other micrographs. Again, you kind of get the idea. I'll go through these real quick. Again, concentric lamella. Here's another concentric lamella, another concentric lamella. Between the concentric lamella, we have the lacuna. This houses the osteocyte. The lines connecting the osteocytes are the canaliculi. And then over here, the blood vessels are gone, but you can see the central canal. This is pretty much, excuse me, this is pretty much what it looks like when you look under the microscope. You'll just see a bunch of osteons next to one another. Right? It looks like all cut tree trunks. Right? That's exactly what it looks like. So let's go back to our note for a moment. So these are, again, the compact bone we said was the solid, dense bone. The basic unit of structure we're going to know as the osteon. And again, these are the parts you should be able to identify, which I just went through. The second type of bone we want to take a look at is the spongy bone. So note here, I put this right at the bottom. You just want to make a note of that. The spongy bone has no osteons. Instead, the small little pieces of bone that make up spongy bone we call trabeculae. Right? The trabeculae is what forms the spongy bone, and then they make up the spaces that contain the bone marrow. So if you're looking here, like this little strut of bone right there, that would be a trabeculae forming this space above. Right? So all these little pieces of bone that are forming the spaces, and the spaces contain the bone marrow, those are the trabeculae. Here's a good picture. So again, this strut of bone going across here, this strut of bone going up this way, this strut of bone going down, all of this is the trabeculae. And so those are the osteons. The last model I want to show you is this bone model. We sometimes refer to this model as the Swiss cheese because it looks like a piece of Swiss cheese. Here's a little bit of the information we want to go over. Actually, you know what? Let me take you. So look at this model from here all the way to here. Kind of keep that in your mind for a minute, and I'm going to take you to that bone. What this model is showing you is a piece from here. This is where the periosteum would be. This is the lining on the outside of the bone. And then we would see the compact bone, and then we would see spongy bone lining the medullary canal. Right? So that Swiss cheese model is a model from here to here. Right? So out here would be the periosteum. All of this would be the compact bone. And then here lining the medullary canal is the spongy bone. And you can always recognize the compact bone because it's thick. And look at this. All of these are the osteons, right? I'm sorry. All of these are the osteons here. The outer lining, that blue membrane, is a tough, thick membrane. It's made up of dense, irregular connective tissue. This is known as the periosteum. There's one other lining. This lining inside here is known as the endosteum. Endo means in. All right, this is a thinner lining. It's got a bunch of different cells that we're going to cover in the bone chapter. That whole blue lining there is the endosteum, right? Endo meaning within. And we again, you can see all the spongy bone over here. All this is spongy bone. Here's a picture I like where we have the periosteum, and you can see the way the periosteum is held to the compact bone is we have these fibers here. These are collagen fibers that actually get embedded in the bone as the bone forms. This way the periosteum doesn't fall down. This is known as perforating fibers. We used to call them Sharpie's fibers, but now they more updated name is perforating fibers. Right, so you see the periosteum with the perforating fibers, and they're actually anchoring into another type of lamella known as circumferential lamella. These are lamella that actually surround the bone. They kind of wrap all the osteons. These lamella we're going to learn in lecture help us to, as we grow, to make our bones wider. Right here, they actually pulled up some circumferential lamella. But for this slide, I just wanted to show you how the perforating fibers get embedded in the circumferential lamella. Now, our bone is very vascular. This is one of the reasons when we fracture a bone, it heals. Unlike other tissues, cartilage doesn't have a good blood supply. Ligaments don't have a good blood supply. So if we tear them, they don't heal very well. Bone does. So we have a bunch of canals where blood vessels are going to be in there. These canals that come from the outside and work their way in, running through the compact bone this way, all these ones running across. These are known as perforating canals. Here they're empty. And then they give rise to the branches that go up into the central canal. So look here. Here's the central canal in the middle of an osteon. All right, so they're going to give rise to the perforating canal blood vessel gives rise to the central canal blood vessels. Here's a picture with the blood vessels in place. So the artery that comes in, I didn't label it, but this hole right here is the nutrient foramen. The blood vessel comes in. This is going to be the nutrient artery. Then it's going to go into the perforating canals. And again, you can see they give rise to the arteries in the central canals. And over here, all of this is arteries in the central canals. Here we can see the artery sticking up. It's a good picture. Even up over here, what they did, they took an osteon and they kind of pulled it out, and you can see the blood vessels right in the central canal. So this slide I labeled for you is just components of the compact bone. I had mentioned earlier that the osteon has the concentric lamella. So all of these circles here and all these osteons, those are the concentric lamella. But I pointed out also when we did the periosteum slide, there's also a circumferential lamella. These were the concentric. These are the circumferential. They go around the circumference of the bone. Um, so that's another one. These lamellae help the bone to grow in width, right? We actually call that oppositional growth, where the bone grows in width, right? So these lamella here that go around are the circumferential. The concentric lamella, like I mentioned, those go around the osteon. Finally, you're going to see some lamella that are between the osteons. These lamella at one time were probably part of an osteon. However, as bone changes, it remodels based on our activity. The osteons will remodel. So all these here, these kind of lamellae, are between the osteons now. They, like I said, they may have been part of an osteon. So these are remnants of osteons known as interstitial lamella. Whenever you hear interstitial, think in between. They may become part of an osteon again. So the three different types of lamella that we see, the first ones were the concentric lamella. They go around the osteon, right? They form the osteon. The circumferential lamella are the ones that wrap the osteons. They go around the circumference. And then the ones in between, kind of left over here, some here, these are interstitial. Like I said, they are remnants of being an osteon at one time. Again, here's just a blow up showing the osteon, right, central canal, concentric lamella, all these. Here's the lacuna empty. And then here on this model, they painted in the osteocyte. You can see it in brown. and then you can see the canaliculi and the little canals. I took another picture here from above where you can see the canaliculi a little bit better. The next picture is showing us kind of the spongy bone side here. So all of this here is the spongy bone. As I mentioned earlier, the struts of bone like this one here, all of these that form the spongy bone, those are known as trabeculae. And then here, the spaces are formed by the trabeculae. That's going to contain the bone marrow. And again, the inner lining of the spongy bone and the medullary canal here is known as the endosteum. Okay, and we had gone over this model before. This is the osteon model. So that concludes our support connective tissues. Our part 5, as you see here, will be on the skin.